Our journey continues in the same place it left off. The Battle Factory, with Ash and Barry admiring Ash's new factory print. There is great deference in the boys' eyes as they examine every square centimetre of the small metal rectangle. That is until Caitlyn tells them to stop being weirdos and knock it off. The boys protest that they're not weirdos, and that proof of beating any frontier brain is a big deal. Caitlyn mutters that maybe she's just seen enough prints that the thrill is gone, causing Barry to demand to know where she would have seen other frontier prints. Caitlyn goes red and tells Barry to stop sticking his nose in other people's business if he doesn't want it broken. Before more barbs can be flung, a ping draws the trio's attention, and they all spin to look at an elevator door near the back of the arena. It slides open, and out of it emerges Thorton and a fully healed Bronzong. The Frontier Brain apologizes for keeping them waiting, and seems to be in better spirits than after his battle with Ash. Barry eagerly asks if that means it's time for their battle, and Thorton says it is, asking if Barry remembers the rules. Barry says he does, reiterating the trivia system and how right answers give buffs, while wrong ones result in electric shocks. Thorton says that's all correct, and straps Bronzong's battle band back on, while encouraging Barry to choose his Pokemon. Barry says he knows just the Pokemon to take on a Steel type, then brings out his Piplup. At this point Caitlyn chimes in, saying Bronzong is a Steel Psychic type, which negates its weakness to water. Barry demands why she didn't tell him this sooner, with Caitlyn replying that she thought he'd have known something so basic, and calls him an idiot. Barry begins to snap that he's gonna fine her for that, but remembers her threat about psychically obliterating his mind, and so quickly changes tack, saying that he's gonna find a new way to win, even without a type advantage. Thornton cuts in, asking if they're done arguing like an old married couple, because they're boring him. Caitlyn calls the Frontier Brain a rude little brat, while Barry grins and says that they should get down to business. Thornton agrees, and so the match commences. As soon as Piplup and Bronzong make a move, a trivia question appears on screen. Barry doesn't even bother to read it, remembering the answer to Ash's first question and proudly declaring the answer is C. It therefore comes as something of a shock when he and Piplup are electrocuted. Thornton sighs, asking if Barry really thought he'd recycle questions, then declares that the answer is false, proving that his opponent didn't even get the question type right. The slightly dazed Piplup and Barry then have to watch as Bronzong's battle band fires out 4 beams, which draw a cube around the arena. When the cube is connected, the band stops emitting light, and the battlefield starts to shimmer as if it was contained in a soap bubble. Barry looks at this strange phenomena with confusion, while Thornton pulls out a little notebook from his pocket and jots something down, saying he's never seen the battle band activate Trick Room before. At once Barry notices something odd within the bubble. Piplup seems to have slowed down while Bronzong has gotten faster. This allows Bronzong to get the first hit once again with a heavy slam, but thankfully it doesn't do much damage to a Pokemon that resists Steel-type moves. Barry then has Piplup use Bubble Beam, which strikes true, annoying Bronzong. Thornton then tells it to use Confusion, which sends Piplup flying. Piplup slams its back into the wall of the Trick Room, then thanks to the power of Confusion is sent rocketing upwards, like the weight in a carnival strength tester, before it gets its bell rung when its head hits the ceiling with an audible thump. Barry cries for his partner to stay strong when Bronzong finally releases its hold and lets the water starter fall to earth. Piplup sets its jaw and begins to rise as another question appears on screen. This time Barry takes the time to read it, with the question being, what item does an Eevee need to evolve into a Flareon? Both Barry and Thornton say Firestone, but to everyone's surprise it is Piplup who gains the benefit, when a metal sheen flashes over it, increasing its defenses. Thornton demands to know how Barry beat him, with Barry chuckling that Thornton may have the brains, but no one can outspeed Sinnoh's #1 Motormouth. In the stands, Ash cheers his support for Barry's comeback, while Caitlyn gives an amused little laugh and says she never imagined that his big mouth would actually be good for something. Now feeling like they're back in the game, Barry orders another Bubble Beam, while Thornton calls for Gyro Ball. Due to Trick Room buffing Bronzong's speed, it spins and tears through the bubbles, slamming into Piplup and sending it slamming back into the wall. As Piplup lays crumpled in a heap on the floor, a sound that Barry dreads to hear begins wailing on the screen. Thornton asks if Barry's ready for its lightning round so soon after they've begun, but Barry says it's not over until it's over, and to bring on the questions. Both trainers look up and see that the theme of this lightning round is the Dragon type. As Piplup begins staggering to its feet, the first question appears on screen. What badge is given to trainers who defeat Blackthorn's Dragon-type gym? Thornton looks to Barry, expecting another lightning-fast response, but sees the blonde boy as looking both confused and terrified. Smirking, the Frontier Brain says that it's the Rising badge, and receives the first ping on his battle band. Cockily, he then asks if Barry's ever seen the Rising Badge before, and begrudgingly Barry admits that he hasn't, even though he spent the last few years in Johto with his dad. Thornton says that it's a shame, then looks back to the screen, awaiting the next question. Barry asks why he isn't attacking, and Thornton says it'll be more entertaining to wait until he gets all 3 lights on his band, then decimate Piplup in one final blow. This angers Barry and Piplup alike, giving them matching glares as Piplup finally manages to take a kneeling stance. Then the second question appears. How many pure dragon types are in Sinnoh's regional Pokédex? Once again, Barry looks uncertain, so Thornton cuts in again and says that there are none. His second light ignites, and Thornton blithely asks Barry if he's enjoying his Battle Factory experience, short though it may be. Barry just grits his teeth and waits for the final question. At last it appears, and it is, what is Dratini's final evolution? Thornton feels no need to be hasty about this, having seen Barry miss the last 2 questions entirely, but this all changes when he sees his challenger's face light up with a manic grin. Though he tries to answer as quickly as he can, Barry is quicker, saying that it is Dragonite. Barry's band pings and Piplup appears to get stronger as it finally stands upright again. Barry teases Thornton that he shouldn't have gotten overconfident, and now it's cost him that super duper power boost he wanted. Thornton angrily snaps back that it doesn't matter, and the 2 boosts he got will be more enough to put Piplup down for the count. He then yells for a gyro ball, and Bronzong starts spinning, but Barry doesn't panic as the large steel-type barrels towards Piplup, and instead says to catch it with a peck. Piplup nods as its beak begins to glow and extend so that when Bronzong and it collide, Piplup is only pushed back instead of taking the brunt of the hit. Thornton then yells for Bronzong to put all its power into taking care of Piplup, and the steel-type begins to gain ground, pushing Piplup further back until its feet are pushed up against the Trick Room wall. But despite this, Piplup does not yield, and for this Barry calls it a champ, saying all their hopes and dreams are with it. This encouragement causes Piplup to glow white and grow. Thornton orders his partner to stop Piplup before it evolves, but it's too late, and when Prinplup finishes its evolution, the dissipation of its evolutionary energy is enough to push Bronzong away and shatter the cubes surrounding their battlefield. Barry whoops his pride for Prinplup, then asks if it's ready to win this battle. Prinplup nods as its flippers begin to glow, showing that it has learned Metal Claw. Barry tells Prinplup to get in there and use Metal Claw, and thanks to the destruction of Trick Room, it is much faster than Bronzong, allowing it to rush in and slam a flipper into its opponent's face. Bronzong is pushed back again, but seems largely unbothered, with Thornton jeering that Barry truly is an oaf for thinking he could use a Steel-type move on a Steel-type, and asking if he knows anything about type matchups. In response, Barry grins, and says that he and Prinplup don't need type matchups because they have Spirit, and that's what's going to net them the victory. Thornton chuckles that he looks forward to proving how unscientific nonsense like Spirit pales in comparison to hard facts like type matchups. But Barry seems unconcerned by this, and tells Thornton to bring it on. Thornton obliges, telling Bronzong to use Heavy Slam, but Barry has Prinplup sidestep the move and pepper Bronzong with a few more Metal Claws. Next, Thornton tries Gyro Ball, but this too Prinplup avoids, leaping into the air and slamming 2 simultaneous Metal Claws into Bronzong's head, making it ring. Finally, growing desperate, the Frontier Brain calls for a confusion, but Barry is ready for this too, and has Prinplup use Peck, its beak extending just far enough to jab Bronzong and break its concentration. No matter what Thornton tries, Barry's quick thinking paired with Prinplup's speedy movement proves to be the perfect counter, and Bronzong can't get a hit in, while Prinplup keeps chipping away at it with Metal Claws. Finally, when Bronzong is sent spinning away by a barrage of Metal Claws, Barry sees his chance to end things, and as Prinplup spin as well, its Metal Claw hammering against Bronzong's steely hide again and again, causing it to pick up speed. When Barry is happy with Bronzong's speed, his Prinplup use one last Metal Claw as a jab. It sends Bronzong spinning at top speed into the back wall, where it crashes, then falls to the floor unconscious. Ash and Caitlyn applaud Barry's battling, while Thornton presents him with a factory print, and instead of sulking, says that perhaps it's time to rethink some of the things he took for certainties. Barry says that it was a really great battle, and then leans in to subtly ask Thornton what is the deal between him and Caitlyn. But this is stopped when Caitlyn herself comes floating towards them, propelled by her own psychic powers, with her hair flowing around her like flames. Barry yelps and tries to hide behind Thornton, but this is spectacularly unsuccessful, since Barry is quite a bit taller than the Frontier Brain. Caitlyn angrily tells him that the deal is none of his business, before telling him to hurry up, since she wants to get to their next destination. Barry and Ash both eagerly agree and head outside, only to find their way blocked by a stretched limousine. The boys ask what a limo's doing out in the middle of the forest, but Caitlyn knows and rounds on Thorton, angrily demanding if he's the one who called Derek. Thornton half-heartedly makes some mumbled excuse that contains the phrase "worried about you," before turning tail and fleeing back inside, while Caitlyn glares at him. Ash asks who's Derek, but Barry answers, saying he's pretty sure he was one of the frontier brains back in Johto. Ash excitedly asks the others if he thinks Derek would battle him, but Caitlyn says there's no time. She then grabs each of her companions by the wrist, just as the limo door opens and a well-dressed man with black hair, except for a blonde streak on top, emerges. As soon as he sees Caitlyn, the man reaches out for her, but the young woman closes her eyes and furrows her brow, causing the world around her, Ash, and Barry to fade away into pitch blackness. For a moment, the trio seem to fall through an infinite void, before touching down softly on the streets of an unfamiliar city. Ash asks where they are, while Barry asks what happened. Caitlyn explains that they're in Hearthome City and that she teleported them, and then she collapses to the ground. Ash is amazed that she was able to do that, and asks why she didn't teleport them from the Battle Pyramid to the Battle Factory. But Caitlyn answers that there are two reasons. The first is that it's harder to teleport multiple people. Well, actually, it's not that much harder to teleport them. The hard part is making sure she doesn't scramble them up into one person upon reappearance. While Barry grimaces, Ash asks what the second reason is, and Caitlyn says that it uses up a lot of energy, just as her stomach lets out a loud rumble. Barry then chimes in, demanding to know why she wanted to get away from Derek so badly she'd use teleportation with all those downsides. Caitlyn cryptically answers that he's been chasing her, and that's reason enough. She then demands he give her a piggyback ride since she's too worn out to walk. Barry says she should just use her power to float like before, but she says she's too worn out for that too, and so he reluctantly crouches down to let her ride on his back. As the trio make their way through the city, Ash asks why Caitlyn chose to bring them here of all places. Caitlyn snaps that she's getting a bit sick of all this questioning, but agrees to answer this last one. She tells the boys that in the split second she had to choose a destination, she instinctively thought of her friend Argenta. She goes on to say that Argenta has been like a mother to her, and she knows she'll help her hide from Derek. Barry asks if this Argenta is Hall Matron Argenta, and Caitlyn confirms this. Barry then smiles and says he knows her too, since she always used to come around to their place for dinner, and he's pretty sure his dad has a crush on her. Ash laughs that since she's a mother figure to Caitlyn, if Argenta and Palmer got together, it'd be like Barry and Caitlyn were brother and sister. The pair quickly veto this idea, telling Ash to shut up and keep walking. Eventually, thanks to Caitlyn's directions, the trio are able to find their way to a building that even in a place as vibrant and metropolitan as Hearthome City, stands out as outlandish. It looks like a white and pink wizard's tower, with a huge white witch's hat for a roof. Ash ponders if this means Argenta is some sort of sorceress, but Barry tells him that she's something much more intimidating, a supermodel. The lights are off in the lobby, but Ash still knocks on the door, and a moment later a woman with a purple bob comes out to see who's there. When she spots Caitlyn and Barry, she beams and ushers the trio inside, gushing delightedly in an affectation of a posh accent. When they are all comfortably seated in Argenta's trendy upstairs apartment overlooking the city, the Hall Matron turns her attention to her guests, asking what they're doing here. Caitlyn simply says she had to teleport the three of them to get away from Derek, and Argenta was the first person she thought of when trying to decide where it would be safe to go. Argenta says she's touched, and that they are welcome to stay with her as long as they like. Ash then groans that he really wanted to get back on the road soon, so they could reach the next battle facility. This causes Argenta to titter and ask if Ash knows who she is. Ash says the other two called her Argenta and told him that she was something called a Hall Matron. Argenta says that this is correct, and with a gleam in her eye tells the young man that her title comes from the fact that she is the overseer of the battle hall and one of Sinnoh's frontier brains. Ash excitedly wants to challenge her right away, but Argenta says not so fast. A frontier battle is not something to be rushed into. It is an elegant spectacle that requires planning and preparation. Ash tries to protest, saying Thorton was willing to battle him as soon as they met, but Argenta says that Thorton has as much style as a Pidgey dropping, and that she will brook no further argument on this topic tonight. She then goes on to say that perhaps they can discuss it in the morning, but for right now what these three need is a good dinner and 8 hours of beauty sleep. After the day they've had, none of the trio can refuse such an offer, so settle in for a pleasant evening. The next morning, Ash awakes bright and early, and upon seeing that Barry is still asleep, slips downstairs to see if he can challenge Argenta before his rival. What greets him is Caitlyn and Argenta huddled together, with Argenta asking if her friends know. Caitlyn says that they don't, and she wants to keep it that way for as long as possible, before she senses Ash's presence and rounds on him. The young man gives a very unconvincing innocent whistle, but instead of anger, Caitlyn decides to follow Ash's lead and feigns innocence as well. There is a brief, awkward moment before Ash blurts out that he wants to challenge Argenta, and Caitlyn sighs with relief that this was all he was thinking about. Argenta says she will face Ash, but not until tomorrow at the earliest, since it takes time to set up a match in the battle hall, and twice as long to promote a double header. Ash asks why she's promoting it, and Argenta says that her facility provides entertainment, as well as a place for young talent to test their mettle. She then urges Ash to go explore the city, while Caitlyn stays and helps her set up. Ash agrees, having learned enough manners from his father to know he shouldn't pry into whatever Caitlyn and Argenta are whispering about. So instead, he gets ready for a day on the town. Before he leaves, Argenta recommends he check out the contest hall and Amity Square, since they are two of her favourite spots in town. Having nothing better to do, Ash takes the Frontier Brain's advice and heads straight for the contest hall. Here he witnesses his first Pokemon contest and is impressed by the creativity of all the coordinators, especially the man who wins it. After this, he heads to Amity Square, but finds that it is closed, with the guard all flustered. Ash asks what's wrong, and gets told that a hideous Pokemon has tunneled its way into the park and is ruining it. The guard says that they've sent in a few men with blast balls to frighten the Pokemon away, but Ash says that it could seriously hurt the Pokemon, and that it's not its fault, since it probably doesn't even know that it's not allowed in the park. A blast then rocks the entryway, and the guard says that it's begun, while Ash, not wanting to see a Pokemon get hurt, uses this explosion and pushes past him, running into the park. What he finds inside is a trio of brutish men chasing after a small Pokemon who can't outrun them on stubby legs. The Pokemon wails each time a bomb goes off near it, but the men keep lobbing them and cackling at its terror. When the Pokemon gets close, Ash leaps in front of it, telling the men to stop. They tell Ash to get out of the way or else, then each throw an explosive that all converges on the Pokemon. Refusing to allow it to be harmed, Ash does the only thing he can think of and throws a Pokeball, catching the Pokemon and shielding it from the blast mere seconds before the biggest explosion yet rocks the whole park. He then yells at the thugs to leave, since now that he's caught it, the Pokemon won't cause any more trouble in Amity Square. Grumbling, the men trudge off, while Ash brings out his newest friend so that they can have a talk. And that's where we're going to leave things. What is this mysterious Pokemon that Ash has captured? Will it be able to help him overcome the challenges of Argenta's battle hall? And what is this business connecting Caitlyn, Argenta, and the mysterious Derek? Find out when the journey continues.